Welcome to your next session with Plato Training, where today we're going to be having a look at policies, specifically equality and diversity, and confidentiality in the office environment. So this is part of your course with Plato Training on business administration. The aims and objectives of today's session are to state why we must follow the policies and procedures, to state the needs that customers could have and why we need to treat them fairly, to define confidentiality and to state how and why we must keep personal information confidential. So let's first have a look at equality and diversity. So I'm going to concentrate here on the word inclusion. So let's have a think about what inclusive workplace means. What does that term mean, an inclusive workplace? What do we need inclusion for in the workplace? And how can we reach inclusion in the workplace? So when we're thinking about the word inclusion comes from the word include or included. So it's making sure that everybody is together, feeling included. So an inclusive workplace, what is that? So inclusion means making sure that everybody feels valued and like they belong. So an inclusive workplace means that everybody is treated fairly and they have equal opportunities, whether these opportunities could be to progress in work, to get to the next level, to get a promotion. It could be to access work. So if you are working with somebody who has broken their leg, but the office is on the 3rd floor and there's no lift, can they access their workstation? And inclusion is about making people feel like they're part of that team. So why is this needed in the workplace? Why do we need inclusion? So because it means that everybody is included, having that inclusive workplace means that nobody is eliminated or left out. And this is important for many scenarios in work, like working together in teamwork. How can we reach inclusion in the workplace? So firstly, we need to ensure that nobody is eliminated or left out from areas of work. Companies need to make sure that recruitment is diverse, ensuring that staff are trained in equality and diversity so that they are aware of the differences that others may have. Workplaces need to ensure that policies and procedures are inclusive. So, for example, there should be a flexible working policy available for people that have a long-term medical problem, especially when they need to attend several appointments. Otherwise, they could be discriminated against because they could be disciplined for their poor attendance for having a long-term medical problem. So in terms of equality and diversity, some questions that I commonly get asked: do I need to change the way that I think to be inclusive? No, you don't. As long as you are respecting and tolerating of others, so you're not criticising others, then you shouldn't need to change the way that you are to be inclusive. So an example of that could be that you don't wish to take part in LGBTQ celebrations, celebrating lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, or questioning sexualities. Perhaps there's a celebration going on in the workplace. You have the right to decline that, but you don't have the right to criticise. And you can respect or tolerate that others don't want to decline it, that they do wish to take part. Some people say, I use English as a second language and feel that my colleagues talk slower to me and I feel singled out, even though I understand what they're saying at normal speed. What should I do? So in this case, if you're comfortable, you should speak to the person who is speaking slowly to you and explain that you understand them at their normal speed. If they react negatively, or if you're not comfortable doing this, then you can speak to your line manager, who should address this, because this is part of an inclusive equality and diversity environment at work. People sometimes say to me, I read in the news that men get paid more than women for the same job at some companies. How is this equality? Now, this is a current topic. It is not equality. is the straight answer. However, many large companies now publish their salaries to show that they are promoting equality and diversity in the workplace. And if they do publish them, it shows that the employer is very forward thinking, which can improve employee satisfaction. I would be more satisfied knowing that my pay is on the scale alongside a male counterpart than I would be if I knew that it was not on the same scale as my male counterpart. But hopefully this becomes the norm in the not too distant future for businesses to tell us roughly the salaries that people are on, whether that be on a scale. So what I mean by scale is, let's say 20 to 25,000, where you go up in increments or steps, depending on your experience, qualifications, etc. So some different needs that people may have. So this image here is taken from the Equality Act of 2010, which we looked at yesterday. So on the Equality Act of 2010, we have lots of different pictures and words of different protected characteristics which show us the differences that our colleagues or our customers may have. And people are all protected in the same manner, regardless of their protected characteristic. So we've got race and ethnicity, disability, religion and belief, age, sexual orientation, sex, gender reassignment, pregnancy and maternity, marriage and civil partnership. So all of those people are protected in the same way under one law. For question 1, I would like you to state the different needs that customers may have. So for this question, what I would like you to do is to show the differences that people may have that you could encounter when you're working in an office, either face-to-face or on the phone. So go back to that slide on the Equality Act. That will help me to look at the different needs that people may have, the differences that they could have. Please make sure you're writing in full sentences and develop a statement of at least 2 sentences. Please pause this video whilst you complete that question. So why can't we treat everybody the same? Because surely if we treat everybody the same, they are having their needs met equally. Can we treat all of these people the same, and does that mean they are equal? The short answer to this is no. If we treat everybody the same, we are putting some people at a disadvantage. So equality is not treating people equally. Instead, we need to treat people fairly and give people fair opportunities by making reasonable adjustments. The phrase reasonable adjustments comes from the Equality Act of 2010. At the bottom of this page here, I've added another picture where you can see on the left hand side the 3 boys are being treated equally. They've all been given a box to stand on so they can see the game. However, the tallest boy doesn't really need something to stand on, whereas the littlest boy still can't see even though he's being treated equally. So in the fair version, the tallest boy has given up his box and the little boy now has 2 and they're all now the same height. A very simple yet really effective diagram to explain the importance of fairness. If we treat everybody the same, we are not respecting their differences. And that is what diversity is about. Diversity is seeing the differences and respecting them. And every customer deserves the same opportunity. They deserve to be heard. And that doesn't matter regardless of their religion, their race, their disability, their marriage, or civil partnership status. When we treat people fairly, we need to make sure we are working effectively because it is underpinned by the law. So just remind yourself that you are working under the law of the Equality Act of 2010 because this law says that we must not discriminate others with different needs and we must make reasonable adjustments to ensure they get treated fairly with the same opportunity as everybody else. So for question 2, I would like you to state the importance of treating people fairly. So I'd like you to think back to the differences that you looked at in question 1, and now you need to show your understanding of why we must treat people fairly and equally, whether they are our customers or our colleagues. You must write in full sentences and develop a statement of at least 2 sentences. Please pause this video whilst you complete that question. Moving on to confidentiality. So I've got a list in front of me here. So which of the following items are confidential that could be found in an office? So we have number 1, addresses of customers. 2, waste in a confidential bin. 3, customer bank details. 4, secret Santa allocation. 5, invoices. 6, waste in the kitchen bin. 7, credit documents. 8, customer order numbers. And 9, office policies and procedures. Have a think for just a moment there. Which of those do you think are confidential information? So let's have a look back at these now. So addresses of customers, waste in a confidential bin, customer bank details, invoices, credit documents, order numbers, all of those are confidential information. So let's look at the ones that aren't confidential. So number 4, secret Santa allocation. So although this can be a secret, it is not official confidential information. You won't want other people to find out who your secret Santa is, perhaps, who you've been allocated, but it is not under your confidentiality policy. Waste in the kitchen bin. So the waste in the kitchen bin should not be confidential, otherwise it should be in the confidential waste bin. It's worrying if there is confidential waste in the kitchen bin, and that would need reporting. Office policies and procedures. So policies and procedures are not confidential. They are available either on the intranet, so your internal internet of your workplace, or on the internet on the World Wide Web. So confidentiality is really important when we work in an office because the customers need to trust you with their data. They don't want their data leaking. They don't want it to be breached and used maliciously if it's sold. It's the law to protect data under Data Protection Act 1998 and GDPR of 2018, which we looked at yesterday. Your contract of employment will state your responsibilities and outline what gross misconduct activities are, and usually a confidentiality breach will be classed as gross misconduct, and if you're not familiar with the term gross misconduct, that means you're going to get fired. Your workplace will also have a confidentiality policy, which essentially becomes the rules around confidentiality. Of course, you can elaborate further on these. I've just brushed over the key points, but you can bring in some of the information that you looked at yesterday regarding the laws on data protection and GDPR. And that leads you on to question 3. So state the importance of maintaining confidentiality with customers. So if you start by showing me information that is confidential when you're working in an office, and then tell me why it is important to keep that data secure for your customers and for the organisation. In terms of the organisation, if you wish, you can expand it into the GDPR fines that we looked at yesterday. You must use full sentences and develop a statement of a minimum of 2 sentences. Please pause this video while you answer question 3. So, confidentiality and protecting data. So, how can staff in an office look after a customer's confidential information? So, have a look at the diagram that I've put on the screen here. Those will give you some ideas. I'll just leave you there for a moment to think. So, in terms of confidentiality, how can we look after customers' data and their personal information? So, first and foremost, don't discuss that information. If you are discussing that information and it is confidential, whether it be discussing it with a colleague that doesn't need to know, whether you are discussing it with your partner, your children, your husband, your wife, when you get home and you're having tea, oh, how was your day today? Oh, yeah, I just got Mrs. Smith's bank details, and then you just blurt them out. Not needed. Not disclosing the information, so not telling people who don't need to know. Locking filing cabinets and removing the keys. So many times I've seen in offices that people have filing cabinets that have a lock and a key, and they're just left open with the key in place, so they're never actually used for their full purpose, which defeats the object of having a lockable filing cabinet. Passwords. So passwords need to be secure and regularly updated. So try and avoid using the same password that you use for everything. If you're guilty of doing that, try and avoid things like your children's names, your pets' names, because they can be quite easy for people to guess once they get to know you. And make sure that they are regularly updated. So my system here asks me to update my password. I think it's about every 4 weeks. And the last one says encrypt data. So when you encrypt data, it turns it into a code. WhatsApp is an example of encrypted data. So if somebody outside tried to look at your WhatsApp messages on your phone, those messages would be encrypted, which means they would come up with symbols. It comes up like a code, and you can only read those messages if you know the code. So it's going to be lots of signs and symbols like dollar signs, at signs, hash signs, numbers, etc. If you're not sure what I mean by that or any of those other terms, please do some research before you answer the next question. So for question 4, I would like you to outline at least 4 ways of protecting personal information of customers. Now just remember that when you're outlining, you need to use full sentences and make a paragraph of 2 to 3 sentences. So the information that I gave you on the previous slide, you can take that as inspiration, but you're going to need to really expand on what I've written. Please pause this video whilst you complete that question. So why must we follow these policies? Why do we need to follow the policy on equality and diversity? And why do we need to follow the policy on confidentiality? Well, both of them are law. So let's look at the first one, in fact. So on equality and diversity, it is the law. So which law was that? Hopefully you remember that. You've got to treat people fairly with no discrimination and give people equal opportunities. You can give them equal opportunities by making reasonable adjustments, and hopefully this will lead to inclusion for staff and customers. For confidentiality, of course, once again, it is underpinned by law, so please try and remember those laws that we looked at for confidentiality. There were 2. You are dealing with sensitive information, and you need to ensure that you are protecting your customers from identity fraud and also protecting yourself from being disciplined or fired. By breaching confidentiality, you could have gross misconduct investigations against you, which could lead to you losing your job. If you are protecting customer sensitive information from identity fraud, this will build trust and of course that is part of your professionalism in your role. So for question 5, I would like you to state how following organisational procedures help staff to give a good level of customer service. So for this question, I would like you to look at some laws and policies and procedures. We've just looked at quite a few over today's work, and then you could show what could happen if we do follow them in comparison to what could happen if we don't follow them. Please remember to write in full sentences and develop a statement of at least 2 sentences. Please pause this video whilst you complete question 5, and that will then lead us on to your contact log. So your learning activity log for today, if you could write today's date in the box that says date. The aim is still customer service. We are doing a business admin unit next week. It feels like a while since we've written business admin there. The activities and what I've learned. So today we've done equality, diversity and confidentiality in the office, and today you have learned. Our session next week is on communication skills in business admin on Tuesday. Lots of scenarios in there. I like scenarios for communication, and that is on Tuesday next week. So that means you should have now covered your aims and objectives of today's session, where we've looked at the needs that customers could have and why we need to treat them fairly. We've looked at what confidentiality is and how and why we've got to keep that information confidential. And finally, we looked at why we must follow the policies and procedures of equality, diversity and confidentiality.